asked to kind of introduce our school. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Horizon, so we've just done a brief profile just to introduce and give you an idea of the sort of environment that we're working in. So we've got Foundation 1 up to Year 6. There's about 500 children currently in school. The majority of our teachers are UK nationals and were trained in the UK. There are a few others. We have some from Australia, some from Germany, but generally it's from the UK. And we follow the national curriculum for England and Wales all of the time, in any opportunity that we can, and we make sure that it's regular, right the way from Foundation 1 up into Year 6, that we're constantly practising our mental maths, and it's there every single day, in every day. We are very much, in terms of our philosophy in our school, a hands-on learning school. We believe that rather than telling the children how to do something, we want them to explore and to experience the learning, and that will actually enable them to remember what they've done and to gain good understanding of it, and that's no exemption for the mental math.
But children learn best by themselves, from each other, from the environment around them. Of course we're there as their teachers to help them, but they learn far more themselves from playing in maths or from self-inspiration. So you'll hear that word a lot today, being facilitators of learning and helping children to learn. Talking with them about maths rather than talking at them about maths.
We are very good at showing our mathematics and developing children's understanding through the models and images. Any different ways that we can bring that in, whether it's relating it to real life context, using beads, bringing things in from home. I've just been in a workshop just now about how important that is, and I think many of the things that they were saying, you know, bringing cups in, using number fan, all these different things that we can get the children doing will really help that, and to see the different concepts that we're trying to teach, some of which are quite abstract, in as many different ways as possible, so that it will click with different children, will understand it in different ways. And again, this very much links to the idea of facilitating the children, and I think that really clarifies and refines their thinking, their understanding, and also helps them to use and understand the vocabulary that makes their explanations much clearer, and so that each other can kind of learn from those. And we try as often as we can to make it interesting, make it fun, making sure that the children are actually enjoying themselves. I think from the presentation, from the analysis of the data of the international tests earlier on, we both sat there and said that doesn't apply to our children. When we looked at the lesson engagement, the enjoyment of lessons, we both felt that definitely our children would be saying, oh, we love maths, because they have fun doing it, and they certainly look forward to them. I think particularly I would say with the more able children that sometimes they don't like to get things wrong, they're used to getting things right all of the time. And I think in terms of recognising that it's good to make mistakes, so that comes when you've got this sort of learning ethos in the classroom as well, which is very supportive, where the children will actually go, oh, let's have another think about that, and they're quite happy to make those mistakes and learn from it and from each other.
And the best thing to see in maths books is not a page full of ticks. As teachers, that every concept is understood and the children are getting every question right, but is there any challenge there? So if children are getting things wrong, that's absolutely fine. As I keep saying to the children, if you got everything right, there'd be no need for us. So thank you for not knowing everything, because it gives us a job. Yeah. So, and they like the fact that teachers don't know everything either. So if you're learning concepts of maths along with them, I've been very honest with my children that I wasn't the best maths pupil at school. I was probably put into a set higher than I should have been, because I was the one who was always playing capture and sat next to the person who put their hand in the air even before the question was asked. And I was the one still computing, still going through, trying to understand what that question was all about, and half the class had already answered it. And I think if children know that you have those barriers as well, you become more real to them, and they're not so worried to get things wrong. And I think, I feel very strongly that we do create that atmosphere for children in our school where if you get it wrong, what's the worst that can happen? You just have another go. And if you do get something wrong, all that's needed is just a little bit more focus, a little bit more support.
And I think the challenge for us in Year 6, certainly for me, we set basically in Year 6, so I have the top set, they really keep me on my toes. There's some of them are quicker than me, to kind of make sure I know the answer before I give the question, so I'm there trying to work it out. And you'll see some of the games as well that I play with them to try and challenge them, because as I say, that really keeps me on my toes. We're very into brain gym and actually making sure that the children are ready to learn. And we start every year by looking at factors that affect our learning, how we can help to any problems that they might come across, and what we can do to kind of support that. Each morning we do something called PACE, which basically starts with the children drinking water, and we've talked about how keeping the brain hydrated is really important. They do something then called an action button, which gets the blood circulating around their body and up into their brain, waking them up again. And then we do cross crawls, which links the left and the right brain, where they're actually crossing the centre line of the brain, which we're about to see children do much better than me. And I bring maths into this first morning session. So as we're waking up our brain and we're getting our right and our left side of the brain working together, we've actually brought in mental maths. Quicker with the methods, actually slowing them down and saying, well, how did you get that answer? They don't like, actually.
Just say and tell you how they did it, and it gets to the stage where they don't even realise they're doing it anymore. So talking them through that and getting them to explain really helps.
Yeah, and definitely talking to those children who are maybe struggling, like you said yourself. If one of the children had stood up and said, this is how I did it, it would also be giving you more time to think about what to do. So again, getting the children up and actually explaining and showing on the whiteboards, and other children kind of responding. And in this situation as well, I'm actually saying, right, can you do where they can use your method to actually to solve your problem, your own problem, which they love doing as well. Is it just the fastest, or does it have to be? Obviously, it has to be also the correct answer as well. And getting the children to think about, well, which one will be the most efficient for me? If the class votes that this is the quickest, but I don't really understand it, then actually I'm better with this method.
Another way, another strategy that works for you, and carry on with it. We're just giving you the tools to do it.
All different places, they're doing problem solving, they're recognising, I know, again, this is all differentiated, so the children are working together, they're talking about what is this problem, where is the next number, they're independent, you can't see any adults here, they're more standing back and supervising and letting the children get on with it, and then going in and doing the questioning to support and develop their learning. I know you were talking to me earlier.
I spoke to our FS1 teacher this morning, so we have lots of little 3-year-olds on the floor and get cuddly toys and just put 2 teddy bears in there or 3 dinosaurs in that hoop, and then the children count them all together. So they're not even looking at.
This is our Year 1 class where they're actually, again, becoming familiar with what are these numbers. They're actually building big blocks that are as tall as them. You can imagine how much fun they were having. Yeah, and actually recognising what these numbers are, ordering these numbers, so many different things you can do with these. And again, there's all sorts of things. So they're ordering, they were doing lots of really, really easy to make, even if you don't have them in school, the children actually jumping along them. And that can go right up even into Year 6 where you've got your empty number. Although number plays a big role in that shape also comes into it, and the objectives for mental, to actually know the properties of shape and be able to work mentally with numbers and that link to the shapes is really important. And again, building those shapes and recognising the properties and making that very concrete initially so that they can move into the abstract. For Year 5 and in Year 6, get the counters out, it's supporting their explanation, particularly when we're saying, well, explain it to me. How did you do that? Well, how can I explain it? I can explain it with counters. This is how it works. This is how this calculation actually works.
It's healthier than using Skittles as well.
Yeah. This lesson, I have trimmed it quite considerably. This lesson started with, how do we multiply by 10? Child immediately put up their hand. You can probably guess what the child said. How do we multiply by 10? We add a 0. So the teacher said, okay, that's interesting, and put 0.9 on the board. So if we add a 0, 0.90, see children in the class going, oh, no, that doesn't quite make sense, because that number's actually the same. that's not what the answer is. So this lesson was all around, is it just add a zero? What's actually happening? So I'll show you the clip. A very practical way of getting the children to realise that it's not just add a zero. Oh, sorry. Add a zero, I'll take away a zero. Okay, so actually getting the children physically moving. They've all got their whiteboards, they become a digit in a number and they're physically jumping through the columns both ways. So they're doing multiplication, and that one obviously is an example of the division. At the end of that lesson, what do we do when we multiply by 10? There's no longer a child that puts their hand up and says, we add a zero, we slide the digits, or the digits jump.
Just to add to that, last year I took support groups out for maths, and these children were in year 4 there, and we spent a session looking at timesing by 10, 100 and 1,000, and I got them jumping. We put units on the floor, the column headings, units, tens, hundreds. They were all given their own individual single digit or double digit or going up into 3 digits, and then they had to actually physically jump to times themselves by 10 and then tell me what their new answer was. And then once I was comfortable with their understanding for timesing and multiplication by 10, then we moved into division.
All sorts of games going on right the way through school. Really love this idea. It's so simple. Literally playing splat, and I've actually wanted to pass when they're doing this, and the children go, can I have a go, can I have a go, I want to splat. And you can do it they absolutely love these little splat hands that are so cheap and easy to buy. And as I say, you can just put any numbers up for this, so you can be doing it with really anything and right the way through the school.
Just to add to that, there are internet games very similar to these, where you've got 2 children coming up and having a go on the interactive whiteboard. And interactive whiteboard games, I couldn't live without. They are fantastic. But if you don't have an interactive whiteboard, or you don't have the access to, then this is just simple and easy to do. It doesn't even have to be a plastic hand. It could just be a child running up and hitting the board.
Important. A couple of the things we've just said now. Obviously, you've got one child doing that. But and then you might think, well, what are the rest of the children doing? There's a few resources and things that we also use to make sure that other children are involved. See if they agree with what everyone else is doing. So they're all actually involved at the same time. And I think that's quite important with the interactive games that you can do on the computer as well, which might be, if you're doing it on the smartboard, a couple of children competing against each other, but everyone else is actually having a go at the same time.
Just some suggested websites that may help with them.
Because use them as resources.
Absolutely.
Definitely,
yes.
There is so much out there. I think you've sorted it into different areas, haven't you? Again, another interactive game, spin to win, boys versus girls, they're all there. This is a small group activity, so again, this can be a main part of the lesson activity while other children are doing. And creating their own calculations. Dice can be used for so many things, such a huge range of things. A game that my class absolutely love, at the end of the day, please, can we do beat the calculator? It's really interesting, and again, I've started to get the children to give the questions and to actually realise that their brains can be quicker than the calculator. We have one child in my class who they do call the calculator. So when we say beat the calculator, they say, does that mean we're against John Hack?
Half 10.5.
See, the calculator was nowhere near there. Good to see, okay, the calculator won this one, so it was quite close. We were making the questions hard enough for it not just to be obvious, that they just knew they were good and were getting really quick, much quicker than being able to type it in. Another thing that is very popular in our school is Maths Champion. This goes on in all of the classes where the children compete against each other, and they do practice this at home. Ready? Double 7.
14.
Courtney, you're out. Double 2.
4.
Sarah, you're out. Double 9.
18.
You're out, Regina. Sit down, Lucas. Double 7.
14.
That was just or nothing. Megan, you're out. Double 6.
12.
You're out, Angus. Double 4.
12.
Double. Ready? Double 5. You're out, Sam. Last 2. Double 6.
12.
Double 7.
14.
You're out, Sophia.
And that continues. So
Champion. I really enjoy it. And what we found is your higher ability children aren't necessarily the ones who get their name on the first, second or third each week. So we've got a few lower core children moving towards lesser ability children who are competing, if it's done in a class, against higher ability children, and they've won. So if they've been practicing, if they've learned, as Tina said, some of you more able children will just see it as a given they're going to, but they don't at all.
yeah, and they really practice.
We've been doing it this week, we've been doing percentages and fractions in Year 6. So we've used it for percentages of quantities and fractions of quantities. So whatever you're doing, whether you want to focus on times tables or you want to focus it on what you've been doing that week.
Did you have to teach percentages?
For percentages, we'll talk about that later on. Yeah, we'll come back to that one.
Yeah. Homeschool links. We have MathsWhiz. I don't know if any of you have heard of MathsWhiz, which is a very individual program for the children. So that starts. This is an optional thing for them, which then looks at all of the areas of maths, which ones they're strong in, which ones they maybe need to do a bit more work in. Parents can access that. We can access that, and it really is a good assessment. That then enables the MathsWhiz website to deliver the programme that's appropriate for that student. So it's not just if it's a Year 4 student that they're on the Year 4 programme the same as everyone else. If they're a Year 4 student who is maybe struggling with place value and their objectives that they need to focus on are back into Year 2, then it will be giving them activities and support for those Year 2 objectives. And if if their shape work is much stronger than that, then they won't be doing all of Year 2 work, they will actually be on Year 4 or Year 5 for their shape work. And that's the same also for our higher ability children. So if the higher ability children do it in Year 6, they can actually go up, the website goes up to Year 8. So they can be, some of those activities are for Year 8. And the teacher resource for that is really good as well. And you can actually show the whole class kind of how with the school as well. So MathsWhiz might well be a website that you might consider looking at either as a whole school or just in terms of supporting your parents, those parents who are saying, how can I support my child at home? So that's a really good way of doing it. They have the warm-up period, and then they're competing against each other. They're looking at where their class is ranked on the leaderboard. Really, really good for getting them to do that extra bit at home as well. And using ICT, that tends to be something that they really, really love doing as well.
Just on that, teachers can have their own idea and log on, and teachers can take part as well. Well, for some of our higher ability students, our top achievers in maths, I let them use my account, so they were actually competing against teachers, and they did quite well actually.
Deliver that either with the children coming in and doing activities with them or showing them video clips so they can actually see what we're doing, what these things look like, which I think is the way we decided to do this presentation. Rather than us saying we do this maths champion and we line the children up, that's it actually in action, that's what it looks like. We also do the Numeracy Passport. I don't know if any of you heard of the Numeracy Passport, or aware of the Numeracy Passport. A passport. It starts in Europe, I think. Is that right? It starts in Europe, and there's about 4 objectives that the children try to achieve, basically as quickly as they can, and they're practicing those at home. So it might be able to count to 10. So it starts, as I say, very, very low down. And they're practicing and practicing and practicing. So successful that we've had to extend the passport into globetrotters and now onto planets as well, aren't
Planets, we've got Venus and Mars.
So yeah.
And so especially for those in Year 6 who are the higher ability students, we're looking at the Year 7 curriculum and looking at Year 7 objectives and having to include those in.
Yeah, and I think, and again, they really love it, and the competition is so strong, isn't it, that they're competing on, well, which one do you want, and they test each other, so when they're practicing those, literally on a whiteboard, they write the questions, again, thinking about, do the children know what these targets are? Yes, they do, because they write questions for each other, and then they swap boards and see who can do it fastest, and again, against the timer. So that's a really, really good programme that helps to bring in those links from school. and with support with the parent workshops and things. So I know some parents say, well, how do I help them with this?
How do you manage it in your school?
Is
it an easy thing? Or?
Yeah, I find it really easy. I do it on whiteboard, so it's not a standard test.
It's not
how it works.
paper one.
No, and because we obviously change them all of the time, and as I say, the children can write the questions. I'll check what questions the children are writing to make sure they're appropriate. For example, it might be to halve half decimal numbers, and if they've only put even digits in there, I'll say, well, that's too easy. I want odd digits in there for you to be halving as well. So the children are well aware, again, in terms of actually taking responsibility and knowing what those targets are. So they write them for each other. They don't see them until they come to the carpet. The timer is on. They turn the board as soon as I press start. They go through them. And then I can test about 6 or 7 children at once and go through and see if they've got it or not. So it's really, really easy.
Right.
We don't do official. We use a paper copy.
We used to do the official paper one.
Yeah.
Or you could even just have little laminated cards, so you can just write on them and then wipe them off, and so they're already prepared.
It is for the children to be talking to each other, but there's so many different ways that we should be giving mental math questions, if you like, and examples and activities that the children should be doing that aren't just, I know it, like times tables, I just know it, but actually what are they going to do? Once they've got those facts that they can recall, what else are we doing with them to make sure that that's not where it kind of stops? So they're the basic recalling facts, but there are several other aspects to the mental maths as well. Actually applying those facts. So once they've learnt them, how are they able to apply them so that they're actually useful? So there's a few examples on the board there. I won't read through them all. I'm sure you go, oh yeah, we do that all of the time. So
I would also like to add there, it's the use of mathematical vocabulary as well. When, if children get used to the question, what is 3 times 7, when it's suddenly written in a written test.
In those snippets of time when you wait for children to come back from PE or when they're coming in from break time, just have it on the board, get them doing it.
Just to let you know about that countdown game, if you just Google and put in maths countdown, you'll get a different version of it, but you can do it with letters and numbers, and has the countdown music on as well.
Just need to do it in lots and lots of different ways and make sure that you're covering all those different strands to make sure you basically train the children rather than just 7. I think that's the end of the presentation. Are there any questions that you'd like us to try and answer about anything we've had?
5 and revision and consolidation year 6. But I had to do a revision lesson on it because when I asked children what percent meant, they've heard the term, but what does it actually mean, and broke it into the words per and cent. Very few of them seem to remember what cent actually meant. So even the clue of century, centimetre, centipede, cents and dollars, linking that back to the 100, and then think, well, if that's 100, what could per mean? So then we establish it as out of 100. We've already covered fractions, so I linked it back to hundredths. So if percent means out of 100, where else and when else have we used that term out of 100? And we looked at fractions last week in hundredths. So linked it back to 100 hundredths is a whole one. So how many percentage equal a whole 100? So it's the same as 100 hundredths.
Those few kids, the 3 kids who could not grasp it anyway, I
think you'll get children
showing them the relationship between decimals, fractions, physically.
You will get children who'll see it in number form and they'll get it just like that. You'll get some children who take a little bit more time eventually, and you'll get those children who need to be visual learners. If you can use number cubes, if you can use packs of Haribo and polar bottles and things like that, anything that makes it. Again, going back to real maths, if I was going to give you a quarter of this bag of cola bottles.
Decimal percentage, and then you can say to children, how do you prove that? A fraction is that decimal. Let's pick up a calculator. The calculator will do it. 1/4 is 1 part out of 4. 1 of the 4. And if you
You'll be surprised after all this practice. I just write for them 1/4 and ask them to write the decimal and percentage, and the girl goes writing 0.4 and 4%.
Yeah, that's a common misconception.
How did you think 4% and you know 4 out of 100 is equal? So they don't even use their thinking.
We were talking about finding 10% of a quantity, so we linked back to 1/10. So it's 10 parts out of 100, 10 parts of 1/10. So I said, how would you find 5%? If you now know how to find 10%, how would you find 5%? You divide by 5. was the answer. So then we had to go back and say, well, if you're actually dividing 100 by 5, then you're not finding 5%.
Yeah, I would say there's probably an issue there in terms of
I think
understanding
gradually
of
starting with
fractions.
10, and
Yeah.
100 from basics to realize the concept of simplifying fractions.
I would definitely use practical objects to help.
To secure like tenths as well, tenths and hundreds, and linking it in that way, I would say. Come on, keep going, yeah. And also sometimes just to step away from it and then come back a few weeks later, rather than to keep going and going and going. Because you always get those few children that when you're going through the
Was there a
objectives.
moment where you felt their strategies not working?
Yeah, there will be times when you feel your strategy isn't working and you have to rethink it.
And you have to go back to the drawing board. Again, just asking people, looking online for other different interactive games so they can see it in different ways. Yeah.
It is, yes. Yeah.